Okay, hi everyone. Today we'll be discussing MMA fighter training and what it takes to become an MMA fighter. So, what we'll be looking into today is the four pillars of a fighter, which are the mental side, physical, technical, and tactical. All right, so I think today we'll just cover a bit on actual physical side, but before we get into that, we'll be discussing standards and the physical attributes of a fighter and an elite athlete. Okay, starting number one, we will talk about standards. Okay, so as a fighter, you know that you're using different muscles to perform different techniques. And when it comes to actual techniques, as in explosiveness and everything that you will be doing as a fighter, and whether you're doing long jump or whatever it might be in your life, the most important thing that you'll have is that people will always tell you there is a standard to what you are doing. And yes, there's always standards. However, when you look at fighter training, someone can tell you that you are doing a squat incorrectly because maybe you're doing a quarter of the range of the squat. And that does not mean that you're not doing it correctly. There's a difference of application when you're training for competition. Competition will mean that you are training within a range which everyone has to do. So if you're going on a squat below knee level, going your hip crease below knee level, that is ensuring that every athlete will perform the same function from one, or the same movement from one point, from point A to point B, before it is complete. Therefore, the rep range would be correct for people to compete against. However, when it comes to training individual muscles, whether it's your small muscles, large muscles, fast or slow twitch muscles, whatever you are training, it will be in line with the sport you are doing. So let's get to the simple example of a squat again. If your athlete wants to develop sharp movements and explosiveness, and not the strength of the explosiveness, just the agile side of it, you will be then training possibly the upper range of a squat. Hence, so as an athlete, you'll be training the upper range of your squat. This will mean you are training more for your bouncing movement, your agility and explosiveness. When you go below parallel on a squat, you engage other muscles which you are not using in the fighter simulation. All right, so that's just an example of where athletes change as into sports that they are actually training for. And if you're training Olympic weightlifting, then by all means you'll be training below the knee, with your hip crease being below knee, and you'll also be training a deep squat to actually develop the strength within the bottom range. So there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, now that we know that there are different standards and applications for different sports, people should not be judging others on how they do movements unless it's in a specific sport. So we're going to get to our basic stuff, like covering now the physical side of a MMA fighter. So the physical side comes to the point where we first discuss sacrifice. What do we mean by sacrifice? Can you just be an athlete or an elite athlete just by getting up in the morning, training, partying with the friends on a Friday, training on Saturday morning, and think that you're going to be all right? No, you're not. So there's so much that leads to the downfall of top athletes. You have so many athletes with great potential, unable to deliver purely because they train as mediocre athletes, knowing that they get up in the morning and doing whatever it takes just to get through the day and then say they've trained. The difference is when you want to be elite, you're not going to be out late nights with your friends. That's the sacrifice you have to make. Why? Sleep is important. You're not going to go out partying and drinking because the same toxicity from your alcohol is going to give you negative effects on your training. Get up in the morning, you're not feeling good to train, you're not in the same spirit you think you are, but you're not, and you will not perform in your training. So that's the one important thing that you need to think of, is sacrifice is so important. It's not about what your coaches can do for you, but what you can do for yourself. Getting up early in the morning when it's required to, training your 3 or 2 sessions a day that you are required to based on your training program and not leaving it out. Yes, and on the mental side, if the body does not feel right on a day, then don't punish yourself to train. Otherwise, you're not achieving what you should achieve. So, not saying that you should have more than one day out, eh? So try and keep your training streamlined. Ensure that whatever you do, you have a plan and stick to that plan. All right. So that's the one thing. Now, when we talk about the physical side, as we are talking about, of an athlete, you cannot be the best there is, once again, if you train mediocre. So understanding that there's application for the different muscle groups that you train is very important. And even if you are competing in another sport, sometimes you need to train certain ranges of those muscle groups in combination with other trainings which you standardly do within that sport. And once you get to know what you should be doing, you'll find that you will improve everything that you do. And I mean, I just take a bit of a look from, even on the CrossFit side, you have Chris Henshaw, which I really admire as a coach. If you look at his training styles, his methodology, like awesome. It's like great stuff. And if you use that type of mindset in the way you coach your athletes, that will make a big difference on how they perform. Knowing that you don't have to only do weights as isolation. No. Have your running, have your weights, have your plyometrics, have your static training exercises, and you can combine them in one, because the endurance side of things is so important. If your athlete is so good in, technically gifted, can be able to kick the best side kick ever, but can't last the 3 to 5 rounds that he's required to last, then it means nothing. If you are an athlete that is training for a workout that is 15 minutes long, and you can do isolated training in 10-20 minute bursts and are able to keep to that, but when it comes to actually competitive training, then you'll find that you are going to suffer if you do not do the type of training that increases and improves your endurance. So bringing running into your training, ensuring that static type of training methods are used. There's not only, even if you have a high intensity workout, doesn't mean that every movement has to be high intensity. You can break your movements up, that you are doing your 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes with a slower movement in between that, or a run in between that. And that you can take on to do an actual hour workout. High intensity, you can do it within bursts, but you can train repetitively over an hour period, which then gives you the workout that you should be having. If you're going to be taking and saying, okay, I'm going to warm up with my hour, I'm going to warm up for 15 minutes, I'm going to train hard for 20 minutes, I'm going to stretch and mobilize again for the rest of my 20-30 minutes, then I haven't really achieved a full hour of training, even though I've been there for an hour. So your stretching, warm-ups, everything that should happen, it should be happening prior to your hour workout. Your warm down, your cool down, which is your final static stretches and mobility work that you will do later, that is also done after your hour training. So your hour should be dedicated to a proper hour session of hard work. And every hour session you do, whether you have 3-hour sessions within a day, that is how it should be programmed. So yes, knowing that you're going to see some videos that I'll be posting where athletes will perform movements maybe not to your standards, because they are not your standards. This is training people within ranges for what will be applicable to them in the ring. And some people come and say, yes, this is a standard in this sport and that's a standard in that sport. Yes, I understand that there. However, we've been training and teaching for many years. Other sports have been around 10, 15, 20 years, but all their movements are coming from other sports that have been around for many years. And those sports we've also been involved in. So yes, as a coach, a fighting coach, I'm around as being a fighting coach for now. But prior to this, I've been in soccer. I've been an athlete, 100, 200 meters, being coached by different types of coaches. Understanding what they ask of me was very important in my development, but also in how I coach now. Understanding that there are different styles, methods of training, looking at other training methodologies from other coaches, which makes you a better coach. Not thinking that you can put everything together on your own and be successful. No,